So welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with Roko and Michelle. And this week is a very special episode for us because it's our 100th episode. 100. Can you freaking believe that? I'm like, what? And it was just a blink ago that it wasn't. So the topic that we're choosing is the power of deciding to try. And so we'll kick it off with a quote that Roko found from JFK. And it's every accomplishment starts with a decision to try. And I have to laugh because this episode's all going to be about just reflecting back on stuff, the lessons that we've learned, the stuff that we can celebrate along the way. But it's when I think back, Roko's the one that brought this up and said, hey, what do you think?
And it was in the summer, a hot evening. I said, can I come over?
And it was like, at first I'm like, what? I don't, because I'm like, what does this look like? What are we going to do? And I think what happened is Roko and I, our history. So we've both done coaching and process improvement and facilitation. And we spent 2
hours.
We spent 2 years in the room together, coaching and developing leaders around A3 thinking, 2 days that we were partners in the room. And I think what happened is I had left Sutter Health. And we missed being in the room together. So this was our opportunity to be in the room together. And it's like, but what do you do? And so this is the lesson part of it, right? What do you do when you don't know the path forward? So we had so much more that we did not know than what we did know. At the time, I had never even listened to a podcast. I had not watched a podcast. I had not, honest to goodness, had not done that. So it's like, what does that even mean? What platforms do you go on? How do you do it? What does it look like? What's the frequency? What should it be? We both knew that we didn't want it to be this,
long,
hour
long.
Yeah. But it was something that literally sound bites that we could do. And I thank my daughter because Roko and I, we spent like hours trying to figure out the name. This is before we even recorded an episode.
Researching.
Yeah. And then I described it to Sam, my daughter, and she goes, "You mean like leadership sound bites?"
Like,
yeah,
yes.
So that's it. I felt like an Indiana Jones movie when Indiana Jones, the guy is up against him with a sword and doing all this fancy stuff, right? And Indy just pulls the gun out and shoots him. So it was like we didn't have to do all the fancy stuff that we were doing.
No.
But I want you to comment. But when I think about it, I've learned so much from the leaders that we've been in the room with, from you and your perspective, because we have shared perspectives, but we also have radically different ones.
Yes.
As well.
Yes.
And I don't know. I just appreciate those moments. So what's on your mind about the power of deciding to try and our 100th episode? I feel like we should bring takeout.
I know, right? I feel like we're a sitcom. Like we made it through season 1.
Yes. Have the cake. Season 2.
But what's on my mind is this. So I remember listening to the radio in the morning. It was iHeart Radio or something like that. And there's a broadcaster, Bobby something, I can't remember his last name right now. Isn't that horrible? Because I don't listen to him anymore now that I live somewhere else. And but he was talking about, he had written a book, and it was basically fake it till you make it. And it was all about trying something and, reinventing himself and just putting himself out there and doing it until he, mastered it, essentially. And I kept thinking, we had, been starting coaching, and I had gone through this whole process of feeling like I was, not the coach, the imposter syndrome.
The imposter syndrome comes to mind, which literally almost every leader we talk to, as you step into that next level up, we feel that way. You feel that
Exactly. And it resonated with me. And he had podcasts. And so I started to listen to his podcast, and I thought, maybe I should try this. And I thought, but I don't want to do it by myself. Who can I call on to do it with me? Because you got to have your people. You got to have your people. You're a safety net. And that's, I called you up and said, hey, can I come over and I want to share something with you. And that's where we were. But it was, trying it, the decision to try it and be open to the fact that it may not be perfect. I mean, I remember like our first episode, and we sent it out to our friends and said, hey, can you give us some critique, some feedback on it? And, they talked about, well, Roko, don't drink your coffee while you're talking on the podcast. So we learned all of these like little things not to do, and how to connect more with our topics, and then we started doing guests. So, I mean, I just think we've grown so much from every episode. And, but it never would have happened if I first didn't have that decision to try.
I have another quote. And because this is about looking back, right, on the beginning. It's so funny because the story that you just told me, the whole backstory, I never heard that from you.
I know. I never shared that with you.
Oh my God, this is all new to me. But somebody else influenced the whatever. So the other quote is, the only time you should look back is to see how far you've come. And I think that's part of it too. So it's so funny when you say, how much we've grown. I'm thinking, is that true that we've grown, or that we've gotten more comfortable with stepping in and having these conversations, right? Hopefully we've grown along the way.
But I know I have. I've learned, like, some of the guests that we've had.
Yeah.
I've learned from them. Like, we were joking with our last episode, both of us were taking notes, and we had pages of notes afterwards. And I took some of those lessons to heart. I'm like, okay, I'm going to still shamelessly, because that's a good nugget.
Yeah.
Because we're still evolving in our leadership. Right. So, I definitely, not just in doing the podcast, but I've grown as an individual and a leader, just hearing your perspective, or having an opportunity to banter back and forth around those topics, allows me to grow, because I'm hearing something other than my voice and my opinion.
So I wonder, it's like with that, I'm going to go back to leaders and other leaders who, and we heard this from Gina Temple and some others, who's on your personal board. Because who are those people that you do banter back and forth with, that you do learn from, that you intentionally challenge yourself to do it? You're one of those people in my sphere. But if you look at other leaders, being very intentional, which, by the way, I never was. I just got lucky. But be intentional if you don't have those people around you, that you do figure out how to get that. And I think it's more challenging where I know you go on site to work, right? I don't go on site except in certain circumstances, like, flying back to do whatever, that there's leadership development with a bunch of leaders on site, but majority of my work is remote. And so for me, the next level up, that commitment, is that intentionality to connect with people. And it's harder.
It is. And I would say, early on, like after I got out of school and started working full time, my board was just my sisters.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. That's all I could trust.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that having people at work, having those people that you could go to and bounce things off of, or talk about your insecurities, or, your learning opportunities, I didn't realize you could have that kind of relationship, right? You could be that vulnerable with somebody. And I think that's one of the lessons for me over the years, is that you do need those people. and it's okay to, to have those people.
Mhm.
You absolutely need those people. And I'm so grateful for the relationships that I've built over the years, and to be able to have that network of people.
Yeah. No, when you're talking, I'm thinking about that, is that as I went through, because I remember at one point in my life, and this is before Margie, I had people that would go, they would ask the question, and if you're a leader out there, I don't know if it's true for you, that when people said, who's your mentor, I couldn't fill a name in that box.
I couldn't either.
Didn't have one until thank you, Margie Hagany.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'm lacking, right? I mean, clearly I'm not, if I can't fill a name in, there's a problem. And it wasn't until Margie, and oh, by the way, I never asked permission for her to be
I did. I did.
Oh, I didn't. I just labeled it. I just said, you're it.
But it was rhetorical. I didn't expect her to say no.
You were hoping.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of those things too, is that, even though I may not label other people as mentors, I think of people that I go to for sound advice, a perspective, that sort of thing, that's so important as you're navigating not just territory that you haven't navigated before, but territory that you may have navigated before, but you need a different perspective on it. Who's that? Trina White called it soundboarding.
Mm-hmm.
And who can you go and bounce that stuff off of? That you trust that it's not going to go anyplace else, and you trust that the feedback and the perspective they give is not going to be one that can guide you in the wrong direction, but it's sound. I guess that's why it's soundboarding, right? Soundboarding. I don't know. But I think about that. So when I look back, there's another quote. In fact, it's the third one that we found, is celebrate your achievements, but never let them be the end of your journey. We don't know who did that quote, but we found it.
But we love it.
Yeah, we do love it. And that's what we're talking about, is this time here, and I say it with leadership, is keep looking back, keep growing, keep learning. And then for us, I think this is a re-energizing and recommitting, if you will, to what we're doing in the path forward. Because the stuff that we started doing, because the Power of series, shoot, we started that and we thought maybe a couple of them.
Yeah.
Freaking 95 episodes, 96, 94 of the Power of, and who thunk it?
Yeah.
But I think that's the next series that we're doing, is the one that Gina Temple is on, and then Christopher Henry so far, is the leadership lessons of these leaders that have very I don't want to say illustrious, but very remarkable careers of where their career journey has taken them, and to be able to learn from them, to your point in the room, and be able to have others get exposed to the learning is huge. It's just super huge. I'm extremely grateful.
Yeah. And so when you read off the quote, and you were talking about the examples, one of the things that came to mind for me too is, there was a point where life got crazy for me, but we wanted to keep this going. And we had to think differently, right? And one of those things was, how can Michelle hold the fort by bringing on other people to pair with in the leadership sound bites? And you brought in Tansy, and you Kathleen, and so it helped us to think differently, but you kept it going. And I think I love that last quote, because you didn't let it be the end of this journey. You were able to keep it going, and allowed me to manage life until I could come back and be committed to it again, with you, with some consistency. So I just, there's so many layers if you
it's funny you say that. I think about Tansy, because Tansy is still going to be coming in and partnering me on stuff. And I remember having a conversation with her, and you talk about the power of deciding to try. I mean, Tansy didn't go pick me for this. I mean, it was a conversation to say, I would love to be in the room with you because she's got such an amazing perspective on leadership, and leadership at the front line in healthcare, nursing leader, it's a freaking hard job. And so it's a cool thing to be able to bring somebody else in like that and to see that perspective, and get her thoughts on it. And the energy is different, right? Because you and I bounce off each other differently than somebody else is. And I remember Nikhil and I, we were in the room together with just two of us, talking, and it creates a different dynamic. And so I love that call out, because I'm going to say to leaders, challenge yourself to do things differently, right? And I think part of it too is if you have your go-to people, look around at who else you can pull in that may not have been someone that you easily pair with, or you would naturally think about doing whatever, but it creates a different energy and different dynamic.
Dennis, so a person that we used to work with at Sutter, Dennis Dees, his philosophy was, how might we? Every time some roadblock came up, he would always say, okay, how might we do this? How might we? He'd always start with how might we? And as you were saying, that's what was coming to my mind is, whenever you're challenged around that, ask yourself the question, how might we? Because it shifts your mind into that space of, okay, there's some way to do it. I may just not have, I may not have the answer right now, but I've got to start brainstorming or reframing or, whatever you need to do to get your head in that space to say, yes, there is a possibility of doing this.
There is. It's so funny. I was on Internet ICF Sacramento chapter. They had a webinar, a meeting series, and there was a guest. She's a coach, MC, master certified coach. And I have a Post-it note right here. Right here is my Post-it note that on my monitor, that's nevertheless, I am willing. So whatever this stuff is, the situation is, and that reminded me when you said, how might we? You have situations that come up that maybe you don't agree with something, or, it's not the ideal thing that you want to do, right? I have this Post-it that's like this mindset of nevertheless, I'm willing. Whatever it is, I may go below the line, whatever it may be, but nevertheless, I'm willing. And I think it also takes me back to my word for this year, and it may morph into next year too, is yes. So it's like I've had, and it goes back to this kind of stuff, right? You can do yes in leadership all the time.
Yes.
Facebook Marketplace. I post stuff to sell on Facebook Marketplace. People will offer, right? Before my yes, I would counter, and maybe the counter is like $5 difference or whatever. And I stop myself now. Like, sure, yes. Will you take what? Yes. So I say that because that stuff can guide you through a number of things, and it's so much less stressful and agonizing of dickering back and forth with certain things. So I encourage you, nevertheless, I'm willing, or just say yes, or how might we, instead of it can't possibly be done. Because I had that come up the other day. I had someone describe to me that they went and observed this process, and out of the process, this was the outcome or deliverable, the amount of deliverable that people could do in this, whatever, in a day with no overtime. And which was different than the target. The target was higher. Okay. And so I'm on a call with 30 people. I'm not the expert in the operations. I'm facilitating the learning. And I looked at the person and I said, you're absolutely right. You went and observed, you documented the process. This is what you're able to do in that time frame. You're absolutely right. But here's the question. Here's the target. What do we need to do to hit the target? Right? because our processes are perfectly designed to deliver our current results. So what needs to change? And it's like Dennis's thing. And I think that that's a very profound shift in how we look at stuff. That if we find ourselves in that space, like for us, it's like, how do we continue on to where you can still do whatever? Because for us, there were like the podcast, there was not an option that we moved away from once a week. You know, my daughter is like, no, consistency. Like, okay, so how do we stay consistent?
How do we do it?
Yeah, and still honor.
We've gone through many iterations of that,
yes,
right?
Yes. But I think that's a thing that I look at and go, it can carry us through so many different scenarios. Is how might we? Nevertheless, I'm willing. Yes, whatever that may be. So anyway, it's been fun. I mean,
Yes.
I feel like we're celebrating like a 21st birthday of someone, not us, but someone.
We've definitely achieved a milestone. Definitely achieved a milestone.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm excited. I love spending time in the room with you. I hope that people enjoy what we do. Topics are great, so keep sharing those.
And we don't have imposter syndrome anymore.
No.
Yeah.
No, we don't. Yeah, no, I'm good. Hopefully we're bringing value. And if you want to be a guest, let us know. I mean, we would love to hear your perspective on what's going on. I mean, that's how we learn. So, and then share it with others. So Roko, what's one thing you want people to walk away with around the power of deciding to try?
I think it's the first quote that you read by JFK is make the decision to try. Yeah. Don't worry about perfection or worry about the logistics. Just start with the decision to try.
Yeah. I agree. I think the thing that I would add to that is, if the thought of doing it alone is scary, go find a buddy. I mean, like Gina Temple was talking, your mud buddy, right? Someone who's going to get the mud. Go find a mud buddy. That can partner.
Mud buddy.
Yes, there you go. I mean, mud buddy. That you can go through and figure it out, because then you can navigate through together. It is more fun. It is more fun. So thank you.
What's your takeaway?
I enjoy this. Well, I think it's finding a mud buddy.
Yeah.
That's my thing. So you don't have to go this alone.
Okay.
Yeah. So, find a partner in crime. I mean, don't commit a crime, but I mean, you know what I mean.
Please don't commit a
crime. Don't
not condoning committing a crime.
No. But I think that's it, and figure out where your passion is and what you want to do. But yeah, find somebody that can go on the journey with you if the thought of the journey alone kind of stops you where you don't want to try. So thank you. This has been Leadership Soundbites with Roko and Michelle, celebrating our 100th episode with the power of deciding to try. And we look forward to more. So thank you.
Bye-bye.